Guys, I have a confession to make. For most of my life, for years, many years, I have felt like photographers were a joke. I don't feel that way any longer, okay? But for the majority of my life, I felt like, and my genuine opinion was that photographers that consider themselves artists were a joke, that they were delusional. As a little kid, I was always into drawing and painting and creating things. And I took it really seriously into high school. While in high school, I was in advanced placement courses where you had to actually submit sketches and paintings and drawings to get into these advanced placement art classes that were college credit while you were in high school. So I took it very seriously. And even into college, for a time, I was a fine arts major. So for years, being one who considered himself an artist,
we don't make mistakes, just happy accidents.
I would look at photography or photographers, and whenever they considered themselves artists, or people would call photograph art, I chuckled. I really did. My opinion was, oh, you can take a picture of a rocking chair in black and white. You're so deep. But I know that's not true anymore. And I think that's mostly due to my kids. For the past few years, I have been watching tutorials and other creators on YouTube and photographers and videographers and just trying to absorb everything I possibly can and learn all I can about cinematography, videography, photography, how aperture works, how ISO works, how all these moving parts come together to form an image or form motion or form video. And for the past few years, gaining this knowledge and learning and progressing as a photographer and a videographer has just consumed me. When I was in 4th grade, my teacher came to my parents concerned that I was struggling and that I may have ADHD. And I remember going and taking a test and sitting with some lady in southern New Mexico at a learning center who had way too much turquoise jewelry on, by the way, and going through flashcards and going through all these different tests and all these things. And I remember ultimately being diagnosed with ADHD when I was in 4th grade. And I remember every day after lunch having to go to the nurse's office and take that little yellow pill. And that was a big self-esteem killer, to be honest, at that time of my life. I remember thinking to myself, why do I have to take this little yellow pill? What makes me different? Am I retarded? What's wrong with me? And I remember my parents finally taking me off of it. And to this day, I'll ask my mom, why did you guys take me off of the medication, off Ritalin when I was a kid? Obviously, I needed it, right? That's what the experts said. And she tells me this day that it's because I was no longer her Daniel. I stopped drawing, I stopped creating, I stopped doing these things that made me me. She said I was just dull. And I've always had a very outlandish personality, I guess. My siblings would say I was very annoying. So I think that might have also had something to do with it. But either way, my parents felt like I was no longer their Daniel. I wasn't creating, I wasn't exploring, I wasn't making them scratch their heads anymore. So they took me off of it. So school was never the easiest thing for me. But over time, especially in high school, I learned how to turn my ADHD into a strength. If you don't have ADHD, and I know the majority of people don't, it's like a light switch where it's either on one way, where you're completely obsessed. If you're doing something like that has all of your focus, nothing else matters. You can't even hear the white noise of anything else going on. Direct, complete attention to one thing. And then the other position of the switch is no interest at all. Like you're just complete, utter disinterest in something. Or you see it and you want to do it, but you just cannot compartmentalize all these other things going on around you, your other thoughts and other things you want to do to be able to focus on a thing. So you're either completely just tractor beam, just stuck and completely 100%, 110% focused on one thing, and everything else is just not even white noise. Or the other is just not being able to focus on one thing and you're all over the place and you can't get anything done. That's ADHD in a nutshell. So I learned while in high school, middle school, high school, how to make this work into my advantage. I would obsess over learning something new. I learned to play several instruments, drums, keyboard, piano, guitar, trades. I've learned how to build things, fix things, because I obsess over fixing this one broken thing, or I obsess over building this one thing. So that's how I made ADHD work for me. So I learned to obsess over learning something, and I would do it and then go on to the next thing. So I became proficient in a lot of different things. My wife says I have a lot of useless information as well. My wife will tell me that she has never met an individual who knows more useless facts than me. And it's been the same thing over the past few years with videography and photography and all these things. I first got interested in drones, and then that brought me over to learning how to make my footage smoother. So I started learning like the 180 rule. So then I picked up a DSLR camera and started again learning how aperture and ISO and frame rates and shutter speed and all these things work together. So now I'm at this point, a few years into these hobbies or interests, if you will, and started a small production company where I'm doing product photography and videos, short promo videos for small businesses in my area. And so over the past few years, it's been an interest, a passion to an extent, but more so just a hobby and an interest. I thought it was cool. I'm a techie. I like it. But it wasn't until a few weeks ago that I realized that I have fallen in love with this art form. It's when my 3 kids were all dressed up one Sunday morning, and I was like, this is a perfect opportunity to get some photos of these kids, some portraits for us to put in our house, for Jordan and I to frame and put up on the wall. So I grabbed the kids and put them in my office, set up my lights, set my camera on a tripod, and I called over each of my kids one at a time. Emmeline, she's 4. And she has been difficult since day one. Since day one. Baby. She's the type of baby that would cry and scream all night and have to walk the hallways with her until she falls asleep again. So getting her to smile and sit still was pretty difficult. I think she's a lot like me. Like, she won't sit still. I tell her smile, and it was just awkward. So I told her instead, Emmeline, how about you tell me a funny story? And that's when she would she starts a story. She does this thing where she clears her throat, and then she starts telling me this story. She started telling me this joke about the bear in the woods and the rabbit, if you know it. Because I told her that, because my dad used to tell it to me all the time. And she starts, before she gets halfway through the story, and then she starts covering her stomach and laughing, look at the ceiling and laughing, and I was trying to get these pictures of her, and it was then where she was looking at the camera just with a genuine laugh, and I caught it. I caught that moment. And then Cohen, his turn. Cohen's easy. Cohen's been easy since day one. He's an easy kid, mellow kid. Literally told him to come to my office, give me a genuine smile. He's just very photogenic, gives me a great smile. He's done, walks off. So next up was Atticus. He's our 4-month-old. And he lately has really been coming into his own in his personality. Recently, he's just started like really making eye contact and laughing and smiling at us and recognizing us. So just a little bit of a bounce and a few giggles, we were able to get him to smile, and caught that moment as well. So afterwards, I look at the pictures on my camera. I'm like, hey, these came out great. I love it, right? The lighting's right, the exposure's right, focus is right. So then I upload them to my computer, touch them up, make them black and white, and Photoshop Jordan's arm out of the picture where she was holding up Atticus. So then I went off and got the pictures printed at 24 by 36 inches. And Jordan and I framed them in black frames. And it was at that moment I fell in love with photography, because what it allowed me to do. Photography allowed me to capture these moments, this genuine millisecond of genuine happiness of my kids. And it's at that moment I realized what photography really means and what it can mean and what it can do. It can allow me to capture the most genuine moments. And it can also allow you to capture the saddest moments, but at least we have them, right? So we can learn from them. It's important to capture history. It's important to capture those moments that aren't always perfect. Now, you're probably wondering why their faces are blurred in these images, and I assume that you would love to see these in their completion, but Jordan and I have made the decision to not share our children's faces on social media at this time in our lives. There's never been a generation whose lives have been so well documented from birth until where they're currently at today. There's never been a generation that has had so little privacy. And Jordan and I just feel that it's our children's right to not have their identity just plastered all over the internet until they're at an age where they can decide if they want to do that for themselves. So, my apologies. I want to share them. I really do. I want to share them with the world. This moment was the catalyst that took photography from just a hobby or an interest or even a side hustle to truly a true passion and a true love interest, to be honest with you. If any of you have a story or can recall a specific moment in which you realized that photography was it for you, or where you just had fell in love with this art form, I'd love to hear it and love in the comments below. I'd love to see it. I'd love to read them. All right, guys. Hey, I apologize for the mushy video, but I just had to share this experience. Go take a picture, go record a video, go create something. See ya.